Imagine a place with no social distancing, no mandatory mask wearing, and where pubs are open. Well, that place actually exists in Britain. It's the Isle of Man.
I thought you were describing somewhere the other side of the world, but the island has ended a 25-day circuit breaker lockdown after 20 days without an unexplained case of COVID-19. Well, joining us is the Chief Minister of the Isle of Man, Howard Quayle, and pub landlord Damien Hawley. Well, Damien, firstly, let's start with you. I mean, how soon do you get your doors open?
Good morning. Yeah, yesterday lunchtime.
And was there a queue of people outside waiting to come in?
There was a few people, actually, yeah. Some regular customers were quite keen to come to the doors, yes.
What is the atmosphere like there now that it's all been lifted? Because, you know, watching people drink together in a pub it feels like a world away from us over here. What was it like a party? Were people downing more than they usually would? Was there a joyous atmosphere?
No, it was just quite a nice atmosphere, actually, quite relaxed, and people were relieved to be out again, so it was lovely.
Chief Minister Quayle, how have you done this? How have you managed to tame the virus?
Well, I suppose we went in pretty hard and fast in March of last year, and we closed our borders initially. Then we brought in some pretty tough restrictions. So people have to quarantine when they come to the Isle of Man if they've travelled off the island for 14 days. And now we do testing on day 1, 6 and 13 before we allow them to go back into the community. We did have, obviously, the last 6 months of last year, we were totally COVID-free. Sadly, we had a few cases at the beginning of January, so we had to bring our circuit break.
And how long have you had the quarantine system in place?
Since March of last year.
So when you look at the mainland Britain, and you see that we still haven't brought it in even today, and we're now 10 months later, are you slightly baffled about this government and its border policy?
Well, I suppose it's trying to compare apples with pears, really. We're a small island in the middle of the Irish Sea with a population of 85,000, so we can be much quicker, more agile, whereas the UK with 60+ million, it will be a lot harder to implement.
Except if you don't mind me jumping in, except, of course, I hear this, and of course size is relevant. But the bottom line is, an island's an island. I mean, the principle applies. It seems to me that the Isle of Man reacted very quickly to realise that the best way to stop the virus coming into Isle of Man was to shut the border. We let everybody in. We let 20 million people in over that period that you were shutting down.
Yes, well, that's what we felt was the best way forward. Obviously, I don't want to compare myself with the rest of the United Kingdom because we are so much smaller, and it was an awful lot easier. It was tough at the time, but it was an awful lot easier for us to do.
The people of the Isle of Man, when it was tough and there was strict lockdown, and obviously that would have had implications for the people that live there, quarantine and so on, what was the reaction? Did they come with you with these decisions, or was there pushback to start with?
No, we had virtually 99% buy-in to everything that we did. We did regular press briefings to let the people know what was happening, and they could see within a couple of months we were virtually back to normal. So they saw the benefits of following the rules. Obviously, there's always a small percentage of people that don't follow the rules, and we did have pretty tough actions if you didn't follow the rules on the island.
How did you ensure compliance? Because we've just been talking about the fact that, you know, when our colleague Charlotte self-isolated, she had a lot of pushback from people saying, well, it's all right for you. When people didn't comply with the rules over in the Isle of Man, what were the penalties?
Well, we would do spot checks for people in quarantine to make sure that they were actually in quarantine and were following the rules. If they broke those rules, then they could get up to 4 weeks in prison.
How many 4-week prison sentences did you issue?
Well, if you look at the last lockdown that we did for 3 weeks, I think 12 people. So we're only looking at sort of 0.0014% of the population. But we did send them to prison. But at the end of the day, our nurses and doctors have got no patients in hospital with COVID. Our schools are all back, and you can go out and hug your mum and dad and go out as normal and work a living.
It was a bit of tough love, wasn't it? And it worked, and I congratulate you. Can I just ask you, Howard Quayle, completely irrelevant to what we've just been discussing, but how have you got away with keeping the title of your island, the Isle of Man, in these gender-neutral days that we now have to endure?
Well, we're the oldest continuous parliament in the world. We've been going since 979. So I think it would be a tough job to get us to alter our name. We're very proud, all of us, all residents of all genders, to be living on the Isle of Man.
Have you got any militant feminists who want to make it Isle of Woman?
No, we were the first place in the world, actually, to give women the vote.
Really?
For ladies owning property on the island, the Isle of Man was the first place to give ladies the vote.
So there you go. The Isle of Man was
It's
the
the
first
most
place.
feminist place in the
It's
country.
the most feminist place in the world. I think irony just died. It's great to talk to you, Chief Minister. Congratulations. It seems like you've run a very, very successful programme of lockdown, followed by quarantine, followed by mass testing. And guess what? You're back to normal, and I congratulate you. Damien, good luck with the bar. If you need any help with making things a little bit more party central, trust me, the moment this is over, I'm coming.
Yeah.
You get a call, Piers.
Not until then, or you would be thrown in the slammer.
Just make sure you get a nice pint of Harvey's for me or something. I can arrange that for you.
Damien and
guys,
Marifel,
thank you very much indeed.
Still ahead on Good Morning Britain. We're going to
Really interesting,
be
though.
joined by the university's Minister
I want to know
Sutherland.
why we couldn't do the same thing in our country.
Why we're still not doing the same thing. They announced that there's
I
going to
know.
be quarantine.
I get the size
and then
thing.
it drifts.
The size is different, but the principle's the same. And those islands around the world that did what Isle of Man have done, and some of them are much bigger islands, they've all ended up in this position now where they're back to
Almost
normal.
zero COVID.
And the question here is, would the British public have taken that deal? Massively draconian lockdown.
But you can hug your mum.
Prison sentences for those who broke the rules. And then you come out the other end, and now here we are in February, and they're all back to normal. Would you have taken that deal if it just meant you couldn't leave the country? I think it's a very interesting question for the government.